Islam being taken over by extremists, I was trying to get you to see that your statement about Christians and the church is every bit a stereotype and every bit a generalization and every bit a characterization of my statement that Islam is being taken over by extremists. Now, when I said Islam is being taken over by extremists, you instantly know that that's not true, and so do I. But what you don't see, because of your Islamic bigotry, because of your Islamic prejudice, is that what you're saying about the church is simply not true. The West gave up on Christianity 3 centuries ago. Okay? We are not living in a Christian society. It is not the case that Christianity has failed to deliver, because you've got to ask the first question, the more intelligent question: what does Christianity first promise to deliver? And it promises to deliver saints to God, and it continues to succeed in that endeavour of producing saints to God. Saints who are regularly standing up against liberal humanists on transgender issues in school, because you're not looking, because you can't be bothered to look, and you're interrupting, so now I will interrupt you when you next speak, and you will complain when I do. But if you had bothered to go and do even a slightly little amount of research, you would have found that there are confessors of the church who are suffering for the faith. I'm going to give you an example where you can see multiple examples. Go and Google Christian Concern and go and look at their case profile, and you will see example after example after example of Christians going to court, being taken to court, being prosecuted, losing their jobs because they are refusing to go along with the liberal agenda. By comparison, Islam permits polygamy institutionally. Islam permits domestic abuse institutionally. Islam permits abortion institutionally. There are no Muslim voices fighting against these things. There are no Muslim voices, liberals and Christians. What you're trying to suggest is that Islam is the answer to Western liberal degeneracy, but you're ignoring the fact that Islam itself is degenerate, and that Christians are standing up to both the liberal humanists and the Islamists and Islam, and the degeneracy found in both.
What's degeneracy to you?
Right, so a degeneracy is actions... Yeah, go on.
I'll tell you one thing, right? When I look at the West today, right, as I was walking down...
Do you recognise the West is not Christian?
Well, a lot of people would claim this country is Christian. I wouldn't say the West...
Do you recognise that the West is not Christian?
Depends what specific country you're talking about. A lot of...
Would you call England Christian?
A lot of English people would claim this country is Christian.
A lot of English people would be very ignorant.
Possibly. But that's not the point. I think you would, for most part, there are many more churches here than mosques, like in the country. There's like 3% Muslim, I think.
It's about 4% Muslim.
Yeah, that's, population-wise, just statistically speaking, it's a Christian country, right?
Yeah.
So just on that alone.
Guys, he doesn't want to be on film, so just film me.
Bloody hell.
Yeah.
So basically, just based on that, when I take a walk down Notting Hill Gate to Marble Arch,
Yeah.
I see degeneracy in front of me.
But what does that say?
I see 16-year-olds naked.
What's that got to do with Christianity?
No, but this is your land. This is the government.
Whose land?
This is the governance.
Hold on one second. Hold on one second.
Statistically, it's a Christian country.
Hold on one second. Hold on one second.
Yeah.
You're assuming that what's normative to Islam and Islamic categories are... Yes, you are.
Yeah,
what is normative to Islam and Islamic categories is applicable. What are you assuming? I'm going to answer that question. You're assuming that what is normative to Islam and Islamic categories is also normative to Christians and Christian categories, which tells me that you've never done comparative religion in your life. I've got a degree in it. I can tell that you've never studied it.
Fine.
Let me finish. Secondly. So when you make statements like, this is your land, England is a liberal, Western, secular democracy. On paper, it has an official religion. That is the Church of England. But in reality, the English have long since stopped being Christian. They haven't been Christian for decades.
Why?
I haven't finished. I haven't finished. Right? But let's look at the erosion that's happening inside the Islamic world, like Tunisia. Tunisia has been abandoned along with Morocco by other Muslims because it's gone beyond the pale of what Islam looks like. Look at Saudi Arabia. The crown prince is at this exact moment in time liberalizing the laws of Saudi Arabia. There are now nightclubs in Saudi Arabia. There are now cinemas in Saudi Arabia. No, I've got a Tunisian friend who just came back there quite recently.
I've been to Tunisia.
When he went to Tunisia, he said he went there and he lost more iman, he lost more faith going to Tunisia than he did from living in France. Why? Because Tunisia is abandoning Islam. The rot of liberalism is everywhere. Christians face it, you face it as Muslims. Yeah, if you go on Edgware Road, who's packing the casinos? People from China and the Southeast Asia, and Arabs, Arab Muslims are packing those casinos.
Okay, so
you go to the nightclub, who are the wide boys going up and trying to chat up the white easy meat?
So
it's Asian Muslims.
So let's get this right. When a country like Saudi somewhat deteriorates in its religious kind of, application to how they govern the society, we blame Islam, right? But when Britain becomes like the most degenerate, like one of the most degenerate cities in the world, it has nothing to do with fall of Christianity and the lack of faith that Christians have. When you look at the number of, there is a Chocodero in Piccadilly is being turned into a mosque.
Yeah, I know.
Where the church? What's happened to all the churches? There is like a big church in Westbourne Grove that's turned into a house. One of the biggest churches in Mayfair. I've been there twice, and it's empty. I could take you there literally now. We could film it. Nobody's interested. And I see more and more Christians opening up to this idea of LGBT abortions, accept anything, love whatever. They have no standard. Now I'm not an expert of religion, but all I can see, the only group of people that are standing up to this nonsense globally are Muslims.
Can I reply to that?
Absolutely.
Right. So firstly, the church is not a building. The body of Christ is the people.
It represents Christians.
Now notice, I didn't interrupt you, but once again, you can't control yourself or even show the basics of decency in conversation. I did not interrupt you, don't interrupt me. This is what our conversation works. We listen to one another. So let's do that, right? Now you point to closing down churches, right? In Iran, there are closing down mosques. But there are no opening churches. Yes, thousands of them. Yes, thousands of them. Now I'm going to finish my point. 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 In Iran, there are thousands of mosques closing down. In Turkey, there are thousands of empty mosques. What does that say about anything to do with the question that you're raising? You're just throwing this out as some kind of triumphant statement.
Oh, it says a lot.
By contrast, Christianity is growing in growing in Iran. In Indonesia, Muslims regularly protest because Christians keep opening new churches, and Muslims are protesting about the opening of new churches in Indonesia. The reality is there are three things that we need to recognize. Liberal humanism is not Christianity. Liberal humanism is not Islam. Islam is not Christianity. Christianity is not Islam. Liberal humanism, both Muslims and Christians agree, is degenerate. And there are many examples of Christians opposing it. If you don't believe me, just Google right now Christian concern and look at their caseload. Loads of Christians are losing their jobs. Loads of Christians are going to court. Loads of Christians are being prosecuted because we don't go along with the LGBT agenda. We don't go along with a trans agenda. We don't go. I'm going to come and debate you in a second. I'll come and debate you. I'll come and debate you in a second, right? And he'll run away, right? But here's the thing, right? When Christians go along with that which is degenerate, I can't find any justification for it in the Bible. But I say to you that polygamy is degenerate, abortion is degenerate, enslaving people is degenerate, domestic abuse is degenerate, but I can show all of them in the Quran and the Hadiths. And so when I condemn the degeneracy of Islam, I'm condemning what is in your book. When you condemn the degeneracy of the church, and I admit there are degenerate churches, You can't point to my Bible to show me where my Bible justifies that corruption of the faith. And that's the difference.
Yeah, the degeneracy of Islam you mentioned, polygamy, what, slavery?
Slavery, yeah.
Anything else?
Abortion.
Okay, abortion, right? I've been to several countries in the Middle East. I've been to parts of North Africa.
Yeah.
I've been to Far East, US. I've never seen this anywhere. I haven't seen polygamy. I think polygamy probably occurs in private, right? But for you to say that's degeneracy, one moment. The reality is, it first of all doesn't bother me because I don't see it. But the way that this, for instance, the degeneracy of Christianity, or at least how they accept everybody to be whatever they want to be, and they're flexible with everything else, I see it right in front of me almost every single day. And if you deny that this is a Christian nation, is there any nation on the planet that you would consider to be Christian? Because I can give you many examples of Islamic countries.
Okay, shall I reply?
You know what, I don't know how many mosques have shut down in Iran, but if I take you there, and if you take an example of some of the 16-year-old girls who walk around the way they do today, they wouldn't stand more than 5 minutes.
Can I reply?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. So the reality is, you're arguing from a fallacy, and you're also arguing from generalizations. You're talking about the church. You're talking about the church as if the church is just one block thing, right? And that therefore, when you point to, say, a corrupt Church of England priest who celebrates transgenderism, that represents all churches. I guarantee there are lots of Christians in this corner today that have gone to churches where that is not celebrated, and it is not part of what Christianity teaches. And therefore, when you speak like that, what you're demonstrating is utter ignorance. If I said to you, and I notice I only raise my voice when you interrupt because you have no manners, but if I said to you that there are mosques in London pushing the idea of Islamic supremacism and supporting Islamic terrorism, and then said that represents all Muslims, you would call me out and say that's Islamophobic. But yet you are here right now practicing Christophobia by generalizing about Christians and talking as if all Christians are the same because of some bad apples. Now let me continue. No, I'm going to finish my point. Because once again, I let you speak, I didn't interrupt you, you've interrupted me, and so now I have to remind you of basic manners. Yeah? And the more you interrupt, the longer I have to talk because I have to keep stopping and spending 4 minutes reminding you not to interrupt. And I don't know how many times we have to do this lesson before you learn the basics of conversation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, right, when we look at Islam, it practices things that are degenerate. But the difference is, I am not blaming Muslims who don't practice Islam, who go out and chat up girls and go to nightclubs and have sex outside of marriage. I'm not condemning Muslims because of their behavior. Why? Because that would be intellectually dishonest, which is the intellectual dishonesty that you're practicing right now. You're looking at some bad Christians and you're going, why are Christians like this? Well, I could just go, well, why are Arab Muslims going to the casinos on Edgware Road? Because they can't gamble in Saudi Arabia, so they come to London to gamble. Ladies and gentlemen, but I don't do that. Why don't I do that? Because that's intellectually dishonest. What I criticize Muslims for is because of what their Quran and Hadiths teach them. That's what I condemn Muslim practice for. So here's my challenge to you. Get out this New Testament that obviously you've never read and show me in the New Testament some practice that you want to condemn from the New Testament, and I'll get out my Quran and I'll show you a practice from the Quran that I want to condemn.
So you're telling me the text is fine, but the followers have a problem, right?
What I'm saying is, what I'm saying is he's generalizing. No, you're not. You're here. No, you've not agreed with me. You've not agreed with me because you haven't heard me. Did I say all followers? Did I all say all followers? Did I say all followers? No, I didn't. He's not listening. He's not listening. Try and listen. Go on. Try again.
So the text perfect.
Try again.
But the followers are imperfect.
Christians,
And all I'm saying, if we live in a world of sin and all the crazy shit that we're seeing, if the only people that are standing up to this are Muslims, what does that say? You want to tell me you're you're not united?
Shall I reply?
Christians are all over the place.
Shall I reply?
Of course you can. You've been talking for like, go.
Right, now please note, I ask if I can reply. I don't just interrupt.
I'd love to hear
Now,
it.
once again, he didn't actually listen. He didn't actually listen. He said the text is fine. This is what he said. He said the text is fine. And then he goes on to say that the followers are weak. And what I pointed out is there are weak Muslim followers who go to nightclubs. Are all those Muslims that industrially raped thousands of young children in the north of England good Muslims or bad Muslims? Obviously he'd want to say bad Muslims. Fine. So let's not judge all Muslims by the bad Muslims. Let's judge Islam by the book. And let's judge Muslim behavior by how they adhere to the book. And he should do the same. Now, ladies and gentlemen, he tried once again to make a sweeping generalization that Christians are all over the place. En contraire, mon ami. The reality is that every Christian that is faithful to the apostolic teaching is in the same place. Christians who are faithful to the apostolic teaching believe in monogamous marriages. Christians who believe in apostolic teaching don't practice slavery. Christians who believe in apostolic teaching don't practice unfaithfulness in their beds. Christians who are faithful to their teaching practice charity to the poor. Christians who are faithful to their teaching look after and honor their mother and father. And I'm just going to give you examples because he's not listening to anything I'm saying. So I'm going to keep giving examples. Christians who are faithful to their teachings don't practice abortion. But Muslims who are faithful to their teaching will practice slavery, will practice polygamy, will practice abortion. They even forbid good things like adoption. So what's degenerate? Islam, Christianity, or liberalism? I say Christianity is not degenerate, Islam and liberalism are.
I agree with
Right, what would you like to say to that?
Well, I don't agree with that.
Well, what would you like to say?
All I can say is when I look at it, no matter what you say, no matter how high you set the standard, when I look at the Christian nations, it's not true, it doesn't hold up. And they don't really give a shit.
What Christian nation?
We just talked about this few.
What
few
Christian
churches.
nation?
We just talked about a few churches.
What Christian nation?
This is it. You deny it even exists. That's how bad this is. When we talk about Islam, there's many Islamic countries we can give, right?
Give me an example. Give me an example.
Like I said, Iran.
Iran,
Saudi,
where thousands of churches are closing, and where the church is growing the fastest.
Hold on.
Okay, what's your next example? What's your next example? Saudi Arabia,
Do you want to go to the Middle East again?
where the Crown Prince is liberalizing the laws of Saudi Arabia, allowing nightclubs.
Sure. I've never seen the degeneracy that I've seen in London.
You've never gone to a Saudi Arabian nightclub.
I've been to Riyadh, I've been to Dammam. You don't even know me.
Rome.
So you've been to a Saudi Arabian nightclub?
No.
But there are Saudi Arabian nightclubs.
If making jokes is all you have, that's absolutely fine. I accept that. I accept that because I know you have nothing. I see your nation. I see your sisters walking down.
What nation?
I see your
What
mothers
nation?
walking- This country.
No,
You're
my
English.
nation
You're
is the
English.
church. No, I'm a
You're all
Christian.
English.
I'm not
I've been
English.
up and down
How do you know I'm
England. I've
English?
seen the
How do you know I'm
degeneracy.
English?
The root of
How do you know I'm
family.
English?
Disgusting.
How do you know I'm
You look
English?
like it. You look like
I look like it.
Absolutely.
Is that racist, ladies and gentlemen? If I had said that to him about his ethnicity, would I be being accused of racism right
In
now?
England, you gave me 3 examples. I gave you more churches that I could take you, and they're all empty. And
Right.
You don't even care.
In Saudi
Your only
Arabia-
defenses are
Oh,
there is
and
one-
Vatican.
In Saudi
Vatican.
Arabia,
Vatican. No more.
in Saudi
No more.
Arabia,
The polygamy of
in
Islam.
Saudi
You have
Arabia,
no
what other
defense.
example have you got?
No defense.
Right.
I have Morocco, I have Algeria.
Morocco
I have
has
Tunisia,
abandoned Islam.
I have
Tunisia
Qatar,
has
I have Kuwait,
abandoned
I have
Islam.
Iran, I have
Where
Turkey,
is
I
your
have Malaysia.
caliphate?
What caliphate?
Where is
Who
your
cares about the
caliphate?
All I
Who
need-
cares about the
all I
caliphate?
need-
Muhammad cared about the
all I need-
caliphate.
all I need is to
Shall we have a
all
conversation?
I need. You
Shall-
don't want to.
shall we have a
you talk
conversation?
for like an hour after me, right? And when I speak, you just want to talk over me.
Right, let's have
Whenever I
shall we
step
do this
into Islamic
time?
country,
Shall we do this
it doesn't
time?
have to be time. I don't need. You
So-
can talk
so
as
don't
much as you
interrupt.
like.
Right.
Look, you've talked for like 3 hours straight, and
No,
still
have
you
I?
haven't given me anything. Like all I told you, when I look at
Everyone
the end
else can
result,
decide that.
You want to set the standard of some fantasy that you have is Christianity is this and that, but the end result stands nowhere close to
Okay, so let me
the
reply.
reality. And
Let's
then
go
all
to a
you're,
mosque
all
and
you're
church
responding
here
with is
in
the
London.
degeneracy of Islam, polygamy, slavery. None of that I see anywhere. you can try to take me someplace, but the best
Are you denying that polygamy is
the best you
practiced
have-
in Islam?
I haven't seen it anywhere. And by the
Does
way,
it?
it doesn't concern me.
Look at him.
By the
Look
way-
at him, man.
by the way, it's-
Are you denying? Are you denying? Are you denying? Are you denying that slavery was practiced for 1400 years in the Islamic world? 1400 years?
Okay, listen to this.
1400.
1400
Yeah.
years.
No.
Wait.
Let-
Can I respond? I don't care about anyone.
it
here.
so?
Let's have a conversation.
All I know
Yeah,
is I don't
you're a
care
bit
about
triggered.
four-
I know you're losing the debate.
I'm not triggered.
I understand why
I
you're
don't care about
triggered.
1400 years ago.
Right?
All I see is today. I
The
look at
conversation
today.
is breaking down. Let's have a conversation.
I look at life in London today,
Yes,
which I assume you're English and you're proud of the city.
you're making a massive assumption
Okay,
there.
fine. I just look at the city today, right? And I see the result of it.
Okay, can I
I
reply?
don't care about 1400 years ago.
Can I
don't care
reply?
about it, yeah.
Can I reply? Okay, right. So, like, try and pay attention this time. Yeah, right? No, you won't. No, you won't. So, I'm going to debate you later. I'm going to debate you. Yeah. Guys, do you want to take? Do you want to? Yeah. Like, don't, guys. All that happens is this is what they do. They get triggered and then they interrupt the conversation. Just ignore them. Yeah. So let me respond. Let me respond. Right. Yeah. So firstly, let's get something clear. The nation of the Christians is the church. We're not English. We're not French, we're not Spanish, we're not Portuguese, we're not German,
Is there any
we're not
country- is there any
Americans,
country you're proud
we're not Polish or Bulgarians,
country-
we're not
is there any
Russians,
country you're proud
we are
Is- you've had thousands of
Christians.
years of history.
That is our nation.
Is there any country
Now,
you're proud
ladies
of?
and gentlemen,
Any group of people?
let's be clear about something. Let's be clear about something. He talked about Islamic countries. He doesn't even know his own religion. There's no such thing as a nation state in the Islamic worldview.
I never said that.
The Islamic worldview has a caliphate. Where is the caliphate? It's dead. It's gone.
Man, all I
It's
said-
been
all I said
destroyed.
was when I visited
Even the
Islamic
very
universities.
idea of the nation state is, according to Islamic categories, a corruption of Islam. Because Islam doesn't have a category called the nation state. It doesn't exist. So the idea that Christians have abandoned Christianity, but Muslims are keeping to Islam, they don't even have a caliphate.
So there are no countries
But
that
the
claim to be
Church
Islamic.
of Jesus Christ is still here.
So there are no countries that
So
claim to be
he
Islamic.
wants to see an example of Christian countries
Are there
or
any
Christian
nations-
influenced
are there any
countries.
nations that implement-
So I'm going to give him a whole bunch of examples. Go to Poland, go to Hungary, go to Slovakia. You will not see the degeneracy of the West. But what did he talk about? He talked about Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has no legitimacy in the Islamic worldview because Islam believes in a caliphate. Let's talk about the most fanatical Muslim country in the world today, Pakistan. What a mess Islam has made of Pakistan. Total mess. You've got violence on a daily basis, bombings, Muslims killing Muslims, Muslims killing Hindus, Muslims killing Christians. The whole country is 2 steps away from falling into anarchy and being taken over by the Taliban. And he has the audacity to complain about London, a country, incidentally, that all of the Muslim audience that can hear my voice in this park have chosen to come to, and most of them are living here. They're not choosing to go and live in Saudi Arabia. I wonder why. They're not choosing to go and live in Morocco. I wonder why. Do you know why? Because the West is better than the Islamic world, and the Muslims are voting with their feet. They are not choosing to flee to the Muslim world, they're choosing to flee to our world. Why? Because our world gives better prospects, better prosperity, better law and order, better institutions than the Islamic world does. Go on, your turn.
First of all, what you said about migrants is actually inaccurate. Because if you look at the average income of all the Muslims that live in Saudi Arabia to Abu Dhabi, they're far more wealthier than the immigrants that come here who are desperate, and they're really, you're talking about classes of people. It has nothing to do with religion. And then secondly, when we talk about the nations of Islam, there are many countries that claim to be Islamic, and they actually do what they say. They don't pretend. For example, when you go to like certain places in even Dubai, or like other examples like Kuwait, Qatar, they will stand up to the legislative powers around Islam, right? There is no single country on the planet that I can think of that's Christian. After all thousands of years of history, all I see is churches being converted into building blocks, hotels, casinos. You're failing all over the place, and you're telling me the text is right, so there's nothing wrong with the followers. Even the Poland example you gave, most of Europe is finished. The only country that's like politically far right is like Hungary, and even then, it's not even close. So you're telling me that degeneracy exists in Islam, polygamy, this and that's a problem. But there is no single nation in the Western world that's Christian or anywhere on the planet. And how could you say it's winning? When all I see, when I look at the world, when I look at the problems, there are far more Christians giving into everything that we've been told, from LGBT to all the other crap that the West is fan of. And then you compare it to like, let's say, Turkey, Iran, or whatever.
But look at Africa.
It's not even close. What about Africa?
Wait, brother, he's using you. He's using you, brother.
Subscribe to the same amount of degeneracy.
Yeah, he's brother. He's using you to. So the reality is. So allow me to reply.
So what I was going to say.
Allow me to reply.
There is a level of unity that's relevant to this matter, right? Christians are not united anymore.
So allow me to reply. Allow me to reply.
In the park, you're the only one who actually.
Can I reply?
The guy who's just singing random tracks.
Can I reply?
And yet the Muslims are standing up, even though they're like 2-3%, they are standing up for what they believe in, no matter what.
So let me reply.
And then in the Christian churches of England, you have LGBT all over the place.
So let me reply. So let me reply. Because once again, all you've done is deal with stereotypes. I gave three examples. All right, I've got to raise my voice. I'm sorry I have to shout, but he's triggered and he won't let me speak. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, he's had to deal in stereotypes. He's had to say, all you Christians, you're finished. And yet I gave three examples. I gave three examples where Christians in Poland, Hungary and Slovakia don't go along with the liberal agenda. And the brother points out another example. In Africa, in Kenya and Gambia and other places where Christians dominate, they are resisting the liberal agenda being pushed by the United States. And I applaud them. I applaud them. And I applaud my brothers and sisters in Eastern and Central Europe who are also resisting. And I say to the West, I say to you English, because I'm not English, I'm a Christian. I say to you English that you have better examples in Eastern and Central Europe and in South and Central Africa on how to run a society than you do from the EU, the United States, or the United Kingdom, or France, or Canada, or Australia, or New Zealand. We don't have to keep following the madness of the liberal elites. We can reject them, we can remove them. But, ladies and gentlemen, when we reject that degeneracy, shouldn't we also reject the degeneracy of Islam? The degeneracy of Islam that practices polygamy, that practices abortion, that legitimizes slavery. I can still buy black children as slaves today. I just have to go to the Islamic world to do it, and it will cost me less than a McDonald's, ladies and gentlemen. Chad. There, I've just mentioned it. Chad, we were having a conversation. So, you want to jump into this conversation? Wait, I haven't finished. If you want to come into the conversation, when you want to come into the conversation, come here, madam. Right, well, I'm just going to continue speaking. Let me finish, and then you can reply if you want to. Should we allow that degeneracy? Because we are being told that we should reject the degeneracy of liberalism. If we are going to reject the degeneracy of liberalism, should we not also reject the degeneracy of Islam? She's already admitted that polygamy is acceptable in Islam. So therefore, why should we accept that? What about domestic abuse that is legitimized in Islam? Go on, sister.
Can I say something?
How about you talk with that sister?
So there's so many arguments here about this religion and that religion and what these people are doing and that those people are doing, and so they're not real Christians or they're not real Muslims or they're following this or they're following that or they're real Muslims or they're bad Muslims. You know, the only important thing is when you leave this earth, where are you going? To make sure you get to heaven. And there is only one being in the whole of history. Let me talk. There is only one being in the whole of history who came to die for the sins of man, because we all, both Muslims and Christians, believe in the story of Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden. And Adam ate that fruit. He disobeyed God. He was neither
Let me give you a
Christian
card,
nor
guys.
Muslim. He was just the father of all mankind. From him, all of us came forth. We who call ourselves Christians, call ourselves Muslims, call ourselves Hindus, call ourselves
Let me give you a card,
Buddhists,
guys.
call ourselves whatever. We all came from Adam. And Adam disobeyed God. And when he did, God told him,
them all on the
you
run.
will surely die.
Yeah, they got them all on the run. We got them beat, guys. We got them beat. We got them beat.
And there was nothing he could do. There was nothing he could do to stop it. So Jesus had to come. Jesus had to come into the earth to pay that price. It is
You let
not
her in.
about Christians. It is not about Christianity or Islam.
Shall we continue our conversation over here?
Come
on. Right.
Who's this lady, Bob?
Come here. We'll continue our conversation. But the point is, you're failing to engage. Guys, if you want to listen to our conversation, we're going to move over this way. Come on, brother. Right. So, okay, peace with you. God bless you, bro. So the point is, right, if you're going to have an argument, right, what you've got to stop doing is what's the Truman-Keown fallacy, which is this idea of you're attacking the believers, but you're not looking at the beliefs. And you're basing
the believers not relevant.
The believers are relevant insofar as they are keeping to the beliefs or not keeping to the beliefs. Prove it. Prove to me. Prove to me. Prove to me. That's again. You're working to ignorance and fallacies. All you're doing is, oh wow! I have Muslim friends who support. I have Muslim friends who support the idea of polygamy. My gosh, what do you want? A giant list? What does this prove? What it tells me that you're ignorant. It tells me that you're ignorant. It tells me that you're ignorant. It tells me you're ignorant. It tells me you're ignorant. It tells me you're ignorant. So so now let me demonstrate the fallacy of his argument. Let me demonstrate the fallacy of his argument by reversing it, and look how quickly he switches on logic. Why is Islam being kidnapped by Islamic extremists where they are bombing and killing around the world? Where? Right, let me give you Somalia, Palestine, Lebanon, Pakistan, Indonesia, Philippines, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, let's think of Egypt, Nigeria, South Sudan, North Sudan. I mean, why is Islam? Notice, now do you see? Suddenly his brain switched on that correlation is not causation. Suddenly he understands the point I was trying to make. Suddenly he understands. Which means that he understood my logic to begin with, but he was intellectually disingenuous because he had a soundbite that he wanted to get out and not engage in real debate. You've just been exposed, bro. Just exposed, bro.
So his argument is, oh, look at all these countries that are Muslim, they're having problems, so Islam is a problem. And I'm telling you, I have enough counter examples, such as like I said, Saudi, the Middle East.
Saudi Arabia is bombing Yemen and has killed 1 million people in Yemen. Go and ask the children in Yemen whether Saudi Arabia is a problem. So try another example, because that just failed. Are you aware that Saudi Arabia has killed nearly as many people in Yemen as the Muslims accuse the Americans of killing in Iraq? Why you interrupted me? Oh, you'd like to have a conversation?
Just because there are political fights or whatever, or wars, doesn't necessarily mean it's down to the religion, frankly speaking. That's just given. What I'm concerned with is the state of society when you look at it and how people live. Not some foreign intervention or fighting over oil or some crap that's influenced by the US or NATO and all the other ones.
Can I reply? Can I reply to that point? Right. So now notice that my interlocutor has suddenly discovered logic. No, I let you speak. Let me speak without interruption. My gosh, man. My gosh, man. I know you're getting bruised in this, baby, but relax, bro. Right? Now notice, when I was trying to point out that his generalization about Christians and the failure of some Christians in the West to stand up against liberalization, and I kept trying to say, no, that doesn't reflect what Christians believe or practice. He couldn't get it, and he kept just repeating himself. But when I flipped the logic on him, and I used the example of a minority of extremist Muslims who commit violence around the world, suddenly he discovered logic, and all of a sudden could make the distinguishment between good examples of Muslims and bad examples of Muslims.
You're making this up.
But yet he ignores the fact that we've mentioned places like Kenya, Poland, Slovakia, Bulgaria. You try marching LGBT pride in Russia, watch what happens to you. You won't get very far because it's illegal. And why is it illegal? Because the Russian Orthodox Church convinced the Russian government to ban it completely. So the reality is we do have alternative Christian examples to liberal Western secular degeneracy. But ladies and gentlemen, but look, he has to look as far as Saudi Arabia, a country that's murdered 1 million people in Yemen. You don't know anything, bro. You don't know anything. Now notice he's interrupted. Notice he's interrupted. Yeah. So he won't complain when I interrupt him. Go on.
All I have to do is walk down any Muslim community across England, France, maybe parts of California, which hopefully you've seen, the Armenian community, right? And I see how they stand up to what they believe in. So I don't need to go as far as Moscow. That's really desperation, yeah?
But you went as far as Saudi Arabia.
It's an example of a nation because I know.
Like my example of a nation in Russia.
Nation of Christianity. Like
how many more examples do you want to be given?
You have to say Poland. And
you keep saying that you. So now you're starting to register. We have got examples on the table.
No, you don't.
No, I don't.
What,
so in that case, Poland? Saudi Arabia doesn't count then, does it?
Okay, so Poland. So it does exist.
Oh, amazing! He's got some geography. He knows Poland exists.
Because earlier you said no. Well, tell me, I hope everybody who's been listening pays attention to him. You said it doesn't exist. You are a nation of people. There are no nations.
Yes, the church is the nation.
And now you're claiming Poland, Bulgaria.
See, if you'd actually listened, what I said was that these were places where the... Yeah, but that's because you're not listening. So Poland, at no point in this conversation have you listened to anything that I have said, and that's why every time you speak, I just get to embarrass you some more.
I'm desperately trying to make sense of it, because like we said, there are many nations in the West who we thought were Christians.
There are many nations in North Africa that are formerly Muslim, that are no longer Muslim. Morocco and Tunisia are being an example.
We gave the best example.
Let's look at the UK. Let's look at the UK, right? Who makes up the majority, or what is the majority faith of prisoners in our prisons? Muslims. What is the majority faith of our women in our battered women's shelters, i.e. women who suffered domestic abuse? Muslims. The fact of the matter is, 250,000 uniformed Salvation Armyists, 250,000 do more charity work in this country than 4 million Muslims. That's just one part of the church. I've not even added on the Church of England, the Baptist Church, the Methodist Church, the Russian Orthodox Church, the Greek Orthodox Church, or the Presbyterian Church or the evangelical churches. The reality is Christianity is bearing fruit. Earlier in this conversation, you referenced.
Do you consider this country as a Christian?
When you well, no, I don't. No, I'm going to finish my point. Earlier in this conversation, you referenced about the richness of the Muslims in the Middle East is held by less than 1% of their entire population, i.e. the richest top 1%, who are the rulers of those kingdoms and control the oil, which makes them some of the richest people in the world. And yet, per capita, by GDP, the lowest part of those Muslim societies are some of the poorest. Why? Why? Because the system of zakat doesn't work. Christians and the welfare state that was set up in 1945, influenced by Christians like William Temple, ladies and gentlemen, and the Archbishop of Canterbury at the time, established a system where in this country we pay 20% tax in redistributive taxes. It's actually 40% redistributive taxes when you add on the NHS.
So what happens to it now?
So that means in the influenced Christian West, we redistribute 40% to the poorest. In the Muslim world, they're capped at 2.5% on zakat. And that's why, despite having a charitable redistributive tax that can only be given to Muslims, can't be given to Christians, can't be given to Jews, can't be given to Hindus, unlike Christian welfare systems, Muslim populations are some of the poorest in the world, and Muslims are voting with their feet to come to the West because the West is better than what Islam has to offer.
So the subject was degeneracy in the West, and your only argument...
Leaving people in poverty is degenerate. No, you interrupted me.
Okay. So you've gone round...
Why all of a sudden are you sensitive
So you've gone round
about interruptions?
denying UK is Christian, desperately trying to see Bulgaria, Poland and maybe Moscow as good examples.
I gave them as Christian influenced.
Ending up on a note of monetary...
Yes, because
frankly speaking,
it's
even-
degenerate to
I'll tell you
be
what,
so
can I
bloody
just
rich.
finish?
For
Can I
one
just
thing,
finish?
I would like to hear you speak with the power of your argument than he did, with the facts.
Fine,
Go on,
fine.
go
Power
for it.
arguments
Let's
will
give
do
him,
it.
give
The
him a couple of
reality is
minutes.
even-
To embarrass himself, yeah.
Well, in a way.
Even
let's-
with the poverty of the the lowest X%
Speak
of
up a bit,
the
'cause I don't think
population,
people
right?
can
The Muslims stand up for the values, and even when you take away that wealth and all the rest of it, and all the examples you give of immigrants coming here, maybe they're poor or they want to be here for better economic circumstances, they actually live by their values, whereas Christians are like all over the place. I've grown up in this city. I've grown up in Camden. I've had Christian friends. I've had Muslim friends from Bengali background. I've seen it for myself. I don't need you telling me what the Christian book says or does. I've seen it for myself how they give into everything.
Can I reply?
And this is a country that you're denying is originally Christian, but over time we can see statistically it's changed a lot. Like I said, all the churches from North London to East London to West London. The only example you had was 3 churches at Bishopsgate that are still somewhat holding up the values. I see it daily in YouTube across the Western Hemisphere that you're just there's nobody there.
Right,
when
can I reply?
Look at the world, I'm going to leave it at this. When I look at the world...
Yeah, he is. They say all of his argument is total generalization. But yeah, he calls it Islamophobic if you generalize about Islam and Muslims.
I will generalize.
There you go. I will generalize. In other words, Christophobia is acceptable amongst Muslims, but if you generalize about Muslims, you're Islamophobic.
The degeneracy that's resulted in the West that Christians are not standing up to is not really there, and nobody's to blame, and the UK is now agnostic, frankly. You're just slowly going to pass it over. All I'm going to say, when I look at the world today, it's a big mess, and anyone who denies it is just not paying attention, and the only people that actually give a shit and paying up, like standing up to all the nonsense, are Muslims.
Okay, so let me reply to that. Firstly, that's fine. Firstly, okay, I'm going to reply. Because if you are what some of the richest people in the world, like the rulers of the Gulf states are some of the richest people in the world, and you're willing to leave your people in poverty You are degenerate.
They're not in poverty.
You
What are you
are
talking about?
degenerate.
What country in the Middle
And
East?
the reality is, now notice the interruptions, notice the interruptions. It's okay, I'll just have to raise my voice because he knows he's losing the debate and he's trying to use disruption, right? So the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, he's right, the world is a mess. And one of the biggest contributors to that mess is the Islamic world. One of the biggest contributors to the mess that the world is in is the Ummah of the Muslims. Why? Because wherever Islam dominates, prejudice, bigotry, intolerance, apartheid systems and violence become normal. Look at Somalia. Look at Sudan. Look at North Nigeria. Look at Egypt. Look at Pakistan. Compare Pakistan to India, two countries born at the same time in 1945, born out of the same context, British colonialism. What have we got? The Indians have just landed their first probe onto the moon. Pakistan is a country that's two steps away from being taken over by the Taliban based in Afghanistan. That's the difference between Hinduism and Islam, ladies and gentlemen.
I think
many countries were born during the period of decolonization. Many of them Muslim, many of them Christian. Go and compare those countries that were former colonies of Europe that are majority Christian and how they are doing to those countries that are former colonies of Europe who are majority Muslim, and you will see that nearly in every measure the Muslim world is doing worse. What's the common factor? Is it a common language? Is it a common economy? Is it a common culture? No, it's a common religion. The common factor of the failure is Islam.